So, the first thing I want to talk about with hating graduate school and not feeling all that smart in graduate school doesn't matter if you're doing a master's degree or whether you're doing a PhD. It's all the same thing. Um, it's okay to hate graduate school. That's kind of the point with what's going on. I want to make sure that that is clear with this is that you do have emotional response, and that is a natural thing when you're learning to have a very a negative emotional response whenever you are learning, right? Like that's totally fine to experience that, and I want to make sure that that's clear that this whole sort of myth that it should be this wonderful, fun thing, I just was not my experience. It's not the experience of virtually most people that I know. But here's the thing, right? So I want the vision that you should have in your mind is not sort of this fun and it's sort of a fairy tale kind of thing, but the proper vision, the way to think about graduate school, it's much more about a journey, or much more about maybe it is training for a marathon, or maybe it is climbing a mountain, or maybe it is doing something that is really big and tough to do that not a lot of people are going to do because it is tough. And that's the whole point with graduate school, right? It is a process of kind of weeding people out because it is tough. The whole process is really tough. And so you have to have that vision in your mind. Now, if you talk to people that do ultra marathons, or you talk to people that do, I don't know, whatever it is, maybe they swim miles and miles, they're not going to tell you that it's fun doing the process. It's really, truly not fun training for things. Yeah, it's kind of enjoyable. The fun moment comes after that you've done that particular activity and to say that you can do that particular thing. Training for climbing Mount Everest is going to be miserable. You're going to have to do a tremendous amount of work. You have to get up early, train virtually every day to do this. If you're doing marathons, you're going to have to run for hours and hours and hours before you can actually do those marathons. So that's what you have to think about, right? It is not during the process. When you're in graduate school right now, it is not supposed to be fun. The fun part is, and the rewarding part comes after you look back and you say, I did that thing that not a lot of people can do. And that's really the mindset that you have to do, right? So I made some notes here and I wanted to sort of, point out why you might sort of feel not that bright. This is kind of a normal response. Or why it's going to feel sort of tough and it's just not going to work with you, right? So one reason why it is not going to be all that fun, or one reason why you're not going to feel all that bright, and you're going to feel like probably the dumbest person in the room, is because you take what ends up happening in graduate school. It's kind of a sorting process, right? So when you are in high school or when you're in public school, there's less of a sorting process that happens with this, right? So you're in elementary school, virtually everybody in the within your neighborhood is in elementary school. You have to go to elementary school. When you go to university is the first moment, or college is the first moment where there's a bit of a sorting process that happens, and there is a threshold of, say, you have to have all A's in your high school to get into a particular university. So all of a sudden you're grouped in with a bunch of really bright people. Now this happens again when you get into graduate school. When you get into a master's program, for example, there'll be another sorting process where you take all the brightest people, usually across the world, or across the country, or whatever the province, state, whatever it is, you take all the brightest people and then you throw them in that room, and then there you have, maybe you have, I don't know, 100 of people that are in that master's program, and they're all the brightest people that are in the program, or the most, maybe not the brightest, but that they work the hardest, or something along those lines. And so naturally, even if you were the brightest person in high school, that means that you're probably going to be in the middle if you take all the brightest people across the state or across the country. And then when you finally do a PhD, what ends up happening is that you're literally competing against all the brightest people in the entire world, right? Because you're not only competing with people that are within your graduate program, but you're competing at the world stage. You're competing with other sort of researchers and things like that. And there's only a handful of people that do this around the world. In my field, the biggest conference we have, I think, is like 14,000 people. Well, that's across the globe. There's 7 billion people. That's a really small subset of people that are all vying for attention of other people, and that are all really bright. That's a really small subset of people. So all of those people are really smart to get into the program. So all of a sudden, you've taken all the brightest people, you've thrown them in the room. So of course, you're going to be at the middle of the road. You're going to be sort of average. Within that particular program. And so that's why it feels kind of like you're not the brightest person there. Everybody experiences this. And part of the other thing that happens is usually because you have low status within your program, right? So as you grow, it's like if you're, when you start kindergarten, you're kind of low status in elementary school, right? Like you're just kind of the newbie, you don't really know what's going on, and then you kind of work your way up until you're at 6th grade or grade 6, and then all of a sudden you're like the top dog in elementary school, right, before you go into middle school. And that's really what happens in graduate school as well. So when you start off, you're kind of at the bottom. You really just have low status, and as you work your way up, you get more and more status. When you get your PhD, you get a little bit of status, right? And when you get your first job, you get a little bit of status. That's where I'm at right now. And then as you work your way up and you go through more and more of the university system, and you become a full professor or a super, emeritus professor or whatever it is, the more that you've been with the game, the more status you get, because more people know you and more people defer to your judgment, right? So that's really what's going on. And so that's part of the reason why you don't feel all that smart. And those people that are at super emeritus or superstar status, whatever it is, they've just put in longer hours. They've just been doing the game for a longer time. And so it feels like they know a lot of the answers. They do, and they are probably much more advanced in their thinking and things like that, but they've also just been doing it for a long time. So just don't feel nervous or anxious or any of those feelings. Try not to feel those things simply because you're just starting out. You're like everybody else, and everybody has started there. So even if you don't feel bright, just realize it's part of the process. And as you've been doing it for longer, I started my PhD in 2005. It's now 2018, so that's 13 years, plus a master's and all that kind of stuff. So I've accumulated a little bit of knowledge. Not a lot. There's a lot more smarter people than me, and they have a lot more wisdom and all that kind of stuff. But I probably know a little bit of stuff at this moment, right? And it's just because I've stuck with the game for that long, and that's really what's going on. Okay, so another thing that you should be thinking about one way to make this a little bit more enjoyable is, instead of thinking about this is hard work, think about it as in terms of the mindset. Think about it in terms of, I am growing as an individual, right? So instead of framing on the difficulties you're experiencing, frame it on the growth that you're experiencing. It's going to change the perspective that you have, and it's going to allow you sort of to weed deeper into what you're actually doing, right? So you're going to want to do this a little bit longer because you've all of a sudden framed it as like, oh, I'm actually growing. This is tough, and I get a lot of anxiety, right? So if you're thinking, and it's just because your brain is using up a lot of brain cells and all that kind of stuff, right? Like lots of blood is up there, so all of your brain is moving around and doing all of its brain stuff. So then you feel exhausted at the end of the day, or you feel very emotional because you're dedicating so much time and thought to those ideas, and you're just going to feel drained and kind of not nice, and that's just part of it, right? But if you view it as like, okay, I'm not going to feel nice, but that's because I'm growing as an individual and I'm growing as a person, then you can deal with this a little bit more. One thing, and this is a really simple trick, and this trick works. I've done it many, many times. Just try to smile during your work, and try to think about just smiling as you're working. And I know it's going to take a little bit of effort to do this. It does. And it's going to feel weird because, if you're in your office by yourself and you're kind of smiling along, it's going to look a little bit strange. But it kind of frames what you're doing a little bit more, and you get a little bit more of a positive response from that work. It really, truly does work. Just try it, sit down, and smile as you're working. You're going to get a little bit of, it's just going to be fun. Really, at the end of the day, it's going to be a little bit more fun with doing that. Same with taking a little bit of breaks and walking and things like that. That makes it a little bit more enjoyable with the process. And that's really what you should be trying to do, is thinking about how you can make this enjoyable. It's a tough thing, but then just have fun, right? At the end of the day, it's like if you're climbing a mountain, you can treat it as like, oh, I'm climbing a mountain, this is miserable and awful. Or you can say, you know what, this is wonderful. Look around me. Look at all the stuff that I'm seeing. Look at the blue skies, or the snow is incredible, right? That's what you have to think about, is look at all the positive things, and it's going to change your mindset. It truly does, and it takes a little bit of time to get used to this. I did this. It probably took me, when I was in my doldrums during my PhD, the later time in my PhD, and it was tough. Like, emotionally, it was draining for me, and it was really awful. But as soon as I changed my mindset and I started smiling and thinking about this, everybody thought I was nuts, and I could tell on their expression on their face. But for me, it was very helpful. When I would smile and sort of just grin and force myself to do that. And it really changed who I was as a person, right? I wouldn't have been doing this whole reciprocity project if I didn't do this, because it changed who I was so much because of this sort of smiling process. And I encourage you to try it, and then you're going to see a lot of really wonderful things around you all of a sudden. It's just a change of mindset. That's it at the end of the day. So, hopefully you like this video. Just know you're absolutely normal. You are not. You might be thinking that you're not the smartest person in the room. You might be thinking that this is miserable and you're hating your graduate school program. But just know that you're absolutely normal, and it's normal not to have fun during it all the time. That's just the normal process. Just kind of absorb it and think about what's going to happen at the end of it, right? So have that sort of mindset. Once I get this done, I can look back and say, look what I accomplished. And this sort of frame of reference is really important. Often we have these sort of negative emotions because you're doing social comparison. What you're doing is you're looking at other people and you're comparing against people that you don't really understand what their backdrop is and what their backstory is. So maybe you're coming from, you were the first person in your family that's doing a PhD. Well, if you're comparing yourself against somebody that has a family of people that are academics, well, there's a totally different game, right? You're not playing the same game at all. So you want to compare against, instead of comparing against other people and doing the social comparison, or maybe you're comparing against somebody that has just, whatever reason, maybe they're intellectually far smarter than you, that they're off the Richter scale in how smart they are, right, in terms of IQ. Well, if you're comparing against them, how are you ever going to catch up, right? So what you want to be comparing against is how you've grown as a person. So look back. So if you're feeling terrible right now, look back at what you're doing, and look back from 6 months ago or a year ago and see how much you've actually accomplished. See how much you've actually learned, and you will be amazed that you came a long ways, right? A lot farther than you'd ever think that you've ever done. And you just have to simply change that frame of reference, and then all of a sudden you're like, you know what, this is not so bad. I can do this, and you just keep moving forward. That's really, at the end of the day, that's what you have to do. Just keep moving forward. Change your frame of reference. Try to smile. Think about how this is a very positive experience, and you're all of a sudden going to start to enjoy it a little more. It's going to be tough. It's not going to be fun, but at the same time, you're doing something that nobody else has done, and that is really fun and really cool to think that you can actually do that. All right, so that's all I want to talk about. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. I do appreciate it, and do subscribe to the YouTube channel. All right, take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.